As you can see, Doppelganger's establishing shot is that of a graveyard, the location of the film for the most part. The choice of graveyard setting was chosen as death is a convention of the psychological thriller genre. I originally planned to film within college, but ultimately decided against this for a multitude of reasons, mainly due to lighting and mise-en-scene. I had debated between this and a more unconventional shot syntax. I initially thought I wanted my short film to open with a shot of my protagonist. I ultimately decided against this, as I felt the shot of the graveyard would immediately instill a sense of uneasiness within the audience. The way the close-up of my protagonist Jack slowly comes to overlay the graveyard shot was intended to be a homage to a similar shot in Enemy. In Enemy, there is a scene in which the camera slowly zooms in on the protagonist Adam's head, as if we are delving into his subconscious. The non-diegetic soundtrack also begins. I wanted the soundtrack to be reminiscent of Enemies. I wanted it to be subtle and unnerving. I believe I was successful in that aim. I sourced the song from incompetech.com. It was important to me that I found a song that I could legally use. The shot of a spider's web was intended to be reminiscent of another important shot I highlighted in my textual analysis, the shot of the shattered car window. My interpretation of this shot was that it represented both control as well as a fractured human psyche. I intended for this shot, as well as a few others like it, to symbolise the latter reason. Beginning with this shot, the diegetic voiceover also kicks in. The voiceover was added to try and give context to the narrative, as my teacher felt it was confusing. Why was the protagonist in the graveyard? The voiceover is framed as the protagonist talking to his therapist, further reinforcing the idea that the film is exploring the protagonist's psyche. I initially felt the voiceover was clunky and awkward. However, I soon added some effects to it in post-production to help it feel in keeping with the overall atmosphere of the film. In this shot, we are properly introduced to the protagonist as he walks past a painted wall. I wanted to include this wall within the film, as I felt the one world idea could be linked into that of the doppelganger concept, the idea of unification. In terms of mise-en-scene, the protagonist is supposed to represent the atypical college student. This was more so inspired by Enemy than the double, as the double setting is intentionally ambiguous in both its place and time. The few shots outside the graveyard utilise colour grading to help them seem more vivid and brighter. This was to juxtapose them against the following shots in the graveyard, which are graded with a blue hue to make them seem colder and more distant. Again, these shots of the treetops were supposed to pay homage to the shattered car window shot in Enemy. To film the two doppelgangers, I had to make heavy use of shot reverse shot. There was likely a way I could do this more coherently in post-production, but I was limited in my experience at this point. To help differentiate between the two doppelgangers, I employed the use of handheld camera techniques inspired by the double, as well as a sound motif, the static noise that plays whenever the doppelganger is in shot. In the double, whenever the two doppelgangers, Jesse and James, are in shot together, the camera becomes uneasy to signify how unnatural the two are together. Furthermore, I try to differentiate between the two doppelgangers through the use of shot perspective. The protagonist, the main doppelganger, is often framed through close-ups to try and capture the actor's emotion, and the doppelganger is filmed at a distance. I also make use of point-of-view shots for this reason. I tried to model my close-ups after the double rather than Enemy, as I felt Ayoade's use of symmetry was more aesthetically pleasing. The double varies its pace of editing in an attempt to disorientate the audience. I tried to employ a similar tactic by occasionally changing my pace of editing. It was necessary for the narrative that I include a shot with the two doppelgangers in frame together. I didn't have the technical expertise for this, but I believe I have managed a reasonable compromise, as the camera pans left from the protagonist's back to reveal the doppelganger. Although up for interpretation, Enemy's narrative is a loop. It is hinted that its narrative will repeat again and again. I wanted to channel this for my own film. To do this, I concluded the film with the film's establishing shot, to imply that the film is beginning again, that its narrative will happen again.